Hello everyone and welcome to Shelved. We have a special episode today. Oh, it's not that special. It's just another episode, but it's a fun one. It's a script that is super interesting. If you listen to our mini episode, you know what I'm talking about. So today we are going to be talking about The Crow 2037, and this is a script written by Rob Zombie. Now, I have not seen all of Rob Zombie's movies, but what I have seen, I am a fan of his work. I am actually a big fan of his first Halloween remake. I didn't see the second one because of all the negativity it got. But I love his just brutal, dark, grimy filmmaking techniques. Like, he just makes everything feel so intense, and just he has a look and tone to his movies that I genuinely love. And you just don't really get a lot of movies like that nowadays. Like, maybe if you look more towards like the Blumhouse production movies, like maybe like The Purge would be kind of a similar feel to what I picture Rob Zombie movies. But this movie, it's so hard to dissect because it's just so weird and interesting, and I really enjoyed talking about this with my guest Vinny, who he was on to talk about Resident Evil. He's a huge horror fan, so kind of any of the horror scripts I come across, they usually go to him, and we talk about horror a lot. And he's a big Rob Zombie fan as well. He loves all the Rob Zombie movies, so he was the perfect guest to get for this one. And we were both super into the script, as you'll hear. I mean, we have some caveats, but it was really fun to talk about. It's a really interesting movie. We're both huge fans of The Crow to varying degrees, and for a long time it was one of my favorite movies, and it is one of his favorite movies. And it was just kind of one of those movies I stumbled upon as when I was young, and hearing the story of Brandon Lee and everything. But I was really drawn to that movie. I still really love it. I love the comic book, and I've, even to a certain degree, enjoy some of the bad, terrible Crow sequels that they made. But yeah, this is a really interesting episode. It's a really interesting script. I highly recommend checking it out. We try to cover everything in there, but there's so much to discuss. It's worth reading on your own. But I really hope you enjoy the episode. It's a fun one. I'm kind of stumbled over my words just trying to describe it. But I don't think I should describe it. The episode should do that for yourself. You don't need that in the intro. So thanks everyone who's been listening to the show, and I hope you're following the mini episodes because there's some fun stuff coming up on there. But yeah, so here's our discussion of The Crow 2037, written by Rob Zombie. All right, you ready?
Yep.
All right. Oh, let's talk about this script. As soon as I found out that this one existed, you were the first person. I think even before I gave you the Resident Evil one, I was like, well, obviously, I have to give this to Vinny. Because you know more about Rob Zombie than I do. I haven't seen all of his movies. But
yeah, I'm also, like, The Crow is like I've seen that over probably a fucking 100 times. It's like one of my favorite movies.
It's always been the top of one of my favorite movies too. Like, that was a movie I discovered at my dad's house. Like, my dad's house is where I discovered a lot of random movies because something happened where he had a roommate or something at one point who had like a bunch of movies that just kind of aggregated into my dad's collection, and that roommate moved and never took his movies. And The Crow was one of them. So the first time I saw it was just I'm at my dad's house looking for something to watch, and I stumbled upon this movie and threw it into the VCR, and it became one of my favorite movies of all time.
Yeah,
kind of like Aliens.
Like I actually went to the movie opening night with.
Really? So you saw it in theater?
Yeah, at the old Logan Theater when it was really run down and shitty. I went with my uncle and my mom's boyfriend at the time, and my uncle was really excited about it. I know he was hyping it up, which kind of got me excited because I was always super close with him, and went to go see it opening night, and it just left like a huge lasting impression, you know. And then
did you or your uncle know the comic or know that it was based on a comic?
No. Yeah. At that time I was pretty young. You know?
Yeah, I didn't know for a really long time that it was. And have you read it since?
No.
Really? I have it. I should bring it in for you. It's similar but different.
Kind of like the script?
Yeah, it's very different from this script.
Yeah.
What I'll say about the original movie, and I'll even say it a little bit about the first sequel, City of Angels, and the book that I think is lost in this script is a lot of the dialogue, I would say, is poetic. Like, the book is very poetic. Like, it's a lot of him rambling, kind of like, if you take the scenes in the movie where he's rambling to people, like where he's quoting the Raven and stuff like that, and just all of his dialogue in the book is very similar to that. He's never, like, outright talking to these people. He's just kind of, like, reading a poem to them is the only way I can think of to describe it.
Yeah, but I feel like Eric Draven in the movie, he was very tasteful, like in what he did, like just the way it was all put together. You know, like the victims aren't we all? Yeah. Everything just had like that certain line. You know, like there's
Brandon Lee had a charisma that he really brought to the character.
Yeah, which is why I've always kind of been one of those people who I don't ever want to see the movie be remade as much as I hear talks about it. And it's just because, like, for one, the guy died during the filming, you know, and when I was reading on the passing of Brandon Lee, it was pretty sad, you know, and as a kid, it was even more kind of traumatic, you know, because you watched the movie and just to see, I used to have the VHS too. Yeah. At the end of the VHS, they had the last ever.
Yeah, his interview. Which I didn't have that version of the VHS, so I came to it after that had happened. So I wasn't really ingrained. Like, to me, it was like, oh, you know, it really sucks that this happened to this dude because he's really good in this movie, and now he's not going to be able to do anything else. But like some other people in my life I knew, like they had that last interview version. That wasn't the version I have, so I haven't even seen that. Yeah,
it was cool. He would always talk. He would basically talk about, like, you know, what books he would read and shit like the authors he liked, and just like
that's got to be on YouTube. Random. I should look that up.
I just remember watching that and just the reality of death, like, kind of hit me at a young age. You know, where I would watch that. And just bummed me out because you watch it, and I'm not just saying it because, you know, he's Bruce Lee's son or whatever. Like, he was the Crow. He was Eric Draven.
Kind of like the way people say Robert Downey Jr. is Iron Man. Like, Brandon Lee embodied the character and was a perfect interpretation.
Or Tim Curry was Pennywise, you know what I mean? Yeah. Like, there's certain, and the Robert Englund is Freddy Krueger. Yeah. There's some things that, granted, like, Robert Englund was in, like, fucking, what is it, like 7 or 8 Nightmare on Elm Street, you know, compared to Brandon Lee, but
yeah, you know, his performance in one movie was that powerful.
Yeah, and going into reading the script, like I didn't know what to expect. I wasn't sure if it was going to be like his spinoff on Eric Draven's story.
From the title alone, it kind of messes with your expectations because you're like, already this is. Like, you know, it's a Crow in the future. You don't know what kind of future, which is probably not the one you might expect from the title. But, yeah, it's really, like, knowing...
Kind of like a fantasy movie.
Yeah, and that's definitely what it feels like. And knowing, like, oh, Rob Zombie wrote a Crow movie is just... That's
intriguing.
Yeah, and it's not something in your brain... And as far as I can tell, this might be the first movie he ever wrote before, like... he's
Jackson, all that shit. Halloween
before his like Hollywood career,
right?
Which so I've seen the Halloween movies, and I have not seen basically all of his other movies. So you've seen them all, but I've seen bits and pieces of like Devil's Rejects and House of a Thousand Corpses. So I see his tone, like his creative essence in those movies. In reading this script, I see a lot of that here as well. Just the way things are described and stuff like that.
But I feel like this one, it definitely, from all of his movies, this script definitely steps out of the box for him. It's like really out there, you know?
Yeah. This was something I said to you the other day, is I feel like this script is what I feel like everybody who loves Rob Zombie's music is like the movie they would have loved for him to make, where it's like demons in hell and fighting them and like shit like that.
So let's talk about how it starts.
Yeah, because right from the beginning is where I felt like, oh, right away, this feels like a Rob Zombie movie.
Yeah. And I wasn't sure, like I said, I didn't know if he was going to approach it in the same way that it was approached in the first one, if it was Eric Draven, if it was... You know, they kill his fiance, or if it was that same story.
And like, is this going to be a reboot? Different. Is it going to be a sequel? And it's basically a standalone thing.
Yeah, and, you know, I was okay with it. It starts where
Damien Finch is the villain,
right?
And it starts with him and a witch,
Gretchen.
Yeah, which we don't learn a lot about the witches throughout the movie.
She vanishes in the beginning, and then
she comes back at the end. And this is, I'll just say, this is my biggest problem with the script. There's a lot going on. So there's a lot of characters. There's a lot of things being explained in the world, but I just don't feel like we get enough explanation on everything.
Right.
Like, there's a lot of things just kind of like brush aside that I'd like to learn more about.
Yeah,
and the witches are one of them.
Okay, so we'll get to, I guess, a little more detail as to what I'm about to talk about. But my biggest problem with the script is, for one, the main character, who I guess you would say would play the Eric Draven's character,
his name is Basil. Yeah.
He seemed like a really cool character, but for one, I didn't like the fact that he came back with no remembrance of what had happened.
Yeah,
so it almost
it's a real
feels
interesting way to take it.
Like, the revenge aspect of it, kind of, it's the way I view it is like in the original Crow, right? If Brandon Lee would have came back and not known what the fuck had happened, it's like, okay, so then what? But he came back with a mission, and it almost made it that more meaningful. You know, like it was like a hit list. He knew what he wanted to do, and he had a plan.
Yeah, like when he comes back, and I'm trying to think in the book, I think it's kind of similar. Like, he knows what's going on and everything. But it's so he comes back in the first movie, and he wanders in the apartment, and he's getting flashbacks. It's like the Crow brings him to the room, and then once he goes in their old apartment, that's when he starts flashing back on everything, and that's basically when his mission starts.
Yeah, and on top of that, there's so many characters that are so...
I would say there's too many characters.
It's not really that for me. It's the Damien who can turn into a stone golem, and
there's
stuff like
just
that.
Not enough
where I'm
explanation on his power.
It just takes away from the characteristics of the Crow. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, when it all comes down to
very
it,
different.
the reason why the Crow stuck out is because there was nobody else like him. When you see Brandon Lee go through, they look at him like, "What the fuck is this guy?"
Yeah.
You know. And then you see this script, and it's like, everybody has power, so he's just some Joe Schmo.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And
well, let's start from the beginning. So the beginning, you get Damien talking to this witch about he wants to rule the world. We have no idea why, just because he can, I guess. And she's like, I see a vision of the future, and this person is going to stop you. So his idea is like, well, let's just go stop them now.
But
it
was a boy.
Yeah.
So he didn't understand it. So how some little boy can do it?
Yeah. So we cut to the boy's house, and he's hanging out with his mom, and we hear about his dad, who never really becomes a character. We never see or hear anything about his dad ever again. And it's implied that he's just like on his way home from work. But before that happens, Damien kills his mom, and then child death right away, shoots the kid in the head.
Yeah.
And then we cut to, I don't know if they say exactly how many years later.
27 years later.
Yeah, 27 years later. So now we're in 2037. And Basil's just a character. He's an adult. I'm very confused on
why he has a fucking sidekick.
I mean, that it's like, I think they explain he found him wandering in the graveyard.
Yeah, but it's just, again, I felt like it was kind of taken away from the main character. Like,
it was. And honestly,
more...
Basil doesn't have very much dialogue. Like, so he has a buddy Fat. So we cut to the future, and like we get a montage basically of everything that's gone horrible. Like, Damien somehow takes over the world and is like in league with Satan or something.
Yeah.
Like, all of a sudden the world is now a hellish desert landscape, and he rules everything, and there's like monsters and demons. And I mean, the script, the tagline is a new world of gods and monsters, which is literal dialogue taken from the movie at like multiple different parts.
Yeah, because I mean, if I'm not mistaken, it was he was watching Uncle Wolfie's Midnight Special. And
was that a real thing?
No, it was just a thing.
Just something they made up.
It's kind of like a Svengoolie type thing. And I guess during like that scene, he mentioned that the whole gods and monsters and stuff.
Yeah,
so
and then he says it again at the end, like when they're doing battle.
And it kind of triggers a whole bunch of memories and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was the reason why I liked the beginning is because it was really ruthless. And I thought it was going to be a really good setup for Basil's character. I thought I came into it not thinking there was going to be a sidekick, not thinking there was going to be a whole bunch of others.
And I got to say, this is like the third script I've done that begins with child death.
Oh, so you have like a weird fetish?
Yeah, I guess. I don't know. I'm not the one picking them. You guys are the ones who pick the scripts.
Fuck me. Okay, so after that, 27 years later, he comes back.
Well, it's not even that he comes back. We just cut to him as an adult. Like, we don't learn about him coming back until halfway through the movie. Like, we cut to him and Fats, who's his buddy, and they're like bounty hunters in this crazy world, and they're hunting bounty. It's basically like a western.
It's like the West world.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like a western in the future. It's like very Westworld-esque.
And that's another thing that kind of weirded me out because like there was no explanation as to why it was kind of went back in time in 2037.
Again, he creates a really interesting world, but just doesn't tell us enough about it.
Right.
Like he tells us a lot about some things, but then there's more. It's like I'd really like to know how the world got from what it was to what it is now.
Put it this way: Rob Zombie's movies sometimes are hard to understand after watching them more than once. I'm telling you from experience. So to fucking read this and not have any kind of visual, I mean, don't get me wrong, he does
a pretty good job of painting a picture.
Yeah, for sure. But I mean, with the kind of graphic visuals and ideas that he has in his head, you can never really picture things until Rob Zombie does it because he has such a weird, unique way of looking at things.
Say what you will about Rob Zombie's movies, some have been successful, some haven't. I fall on the side of really liking his style and tone. I think he's a hardcore filmmaker, and I don't think there's a lot of people making movies like he does, but he's a really good writer, and he can paint you a word picture, and you really see the world he envisioned. It's just like in the writing, I want a little more history,
right? Like ghouls, like where did the ghouls come from?
Yeah,
like I understood that they thought they were dead, and all of a sudden they flashed light, and it's kind of like Lost Boys scene. Yeah. But,
and I'm totally fine with keeping some things vague, but there's some things like the world in particular, like how it's changed, why he did what he did, and stuff like this. I wish there was a little more of that. Like, there's a lot of implications of like, okay, we have these characters like Skag, I think his name is, who's like his general guy. Like, okay, you kind of get the hierarchy. Yeah, right? Captain Skag, I think, because it just reminded me of Borderlands because there's characters called Skags in there.
Reminded me of Captain Spaulding. That's why I was like, no, but there were a couple characters like Skag seems like a really cool character.
Yeah,
it's kind of ruthless. Another guy, kind of like the boss's go-to guy when he needs somebody to take care of somebody.
They're kind of introducing characters left and right in the beginning. Like we get introduced to this like governor or mayor or something of like it seems like the Earth is divided into different territories, and those territories have governors. And then right away we see one's wife getting executed and him being arrested for treason. We never learn why. Like the character shows up later at the end for very little effect. And yeah, it's just like there's no real point to even have that character in there because he doesn't contribute to the story in the end.
No.
I guess it's just basically to show the ruthlessness of Skag, who does come off as kind of like an evil dick, and like you're waiting for him to get his. And I like where that ends up with him and the guy he's fighting against. Which I just realized I took very little notes on character names.
No, I had a couple too, and I forgot.
Yeah, so I mean, the beginning is a lot of just like bounty hunting.
Yeah. But like, okay, so another thing is I wish he would have kept the original style of the whole revenge.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm trying to think of a way to word it. Okay, so in the original, right, Brandon Lee obviously wanted to go after Top Hat.
Yeah.
But
well, actually, in reality, he's going after T-Bird's crew. He doesn't even know he has to go after Top Hat.
What I'm saying is that's your big boss. That's your fucking Goro or whatever from Mortal Kombat. But you're going after T-Bird. You're going after all these people. And but all of them kind of had a role in what he was going after.
Yeah, absolutely.
And what was weird is like these new characters that they're introducing it's like, okay, so what do they have to do with the death?
Nothing.
Like nothing.
Literally, Damien is the only one. Damien and Gretchen.
And he, like, to think that Basil came back from the dead to just make money. Like, what pissed me off is, like, what is a dead guy, what is he going to profit with real money? Like,
and see, the thing is, he doesn't even know he's dead, does he?
He does, because he says it in the end. Like, he tells...
Yeah, but he finds out, because he comes back, he has no memory. That's the thing. He doesn't know that he's dead, and then once he gets eaten by a monster, and his memories come back, that's when he finds out that he is, and that's when he shows Fats, and I think he stabbed himself in the hand or something.
I don't know. I just feel like it was hard for me to put to put the full picture together, because I just had so many questions, and I wish... It's the kind of thing where, I mean, it's unrealistic, but I fucking wish a guy like Rob Zombie was next to me to be like, okay, well...
Yeah. And I don't know how many drafts of this he did. Maybe this is his first and only draft, and there could have been more revisions. That information, there's not a ton of information out there on this movie other than he turned this in, and I don't even know who he turned it into. I don't know who owns the rights to that franchise at the time or if it's the same people. And they passed on it, but they kept the script because they feel like there's a good movie in here, and I agree with them. I 100% agree with this, that there's a good movie in here, and that they could just rip out all the parts to The Crow and make it its own movie. And I 100% would like to see that.
It sticks out. Like, the characters sound really cool, but it's just like...
Yeah. Like, you can keep all the names and keep everything.
The thing is, like, it's just hard for me because I love The Crow. I mean, I watched the movie and I feel like I fucking quote it from beginning to end.
Yeah.
But then, like, you know, so I feel like I'm a little more harsh on the movie, but if I were to read it with no knowledge at all of that it has to do with The Crow.
I mean, there's very little reference to the bird itself anyway.
Yeah. Like, and I mean, another weird thing was Damien, when they would go through that weird alien world and things would turn black and white.
Yeah, that was real weird.
And it's just like...
Was that... Did they specifically call it out as aliens, or was it like demons?
It was like...
Or did they just define...
It was like an alien type, but I forgot it was
we get this like alien creature introduced that, again, not enough information on it. Doesn't really contribute to the plot other than he says that he can kill Basil.
Yeah.
And then that he doesn't.
Basically, the alien is what foresees the future and tells him, like, you know, this is what's going to happen, and there's going to be a kid who stops
it's
you.
implied that a lot of Damien's power comes from this thing.
Right. So, I mean, another cool thing was, I'm glad that they at least kept the parts where you can still see from the Crow's point of view.
Yeah.
You know, and he would still get instincts because through the bird.
Yeah, which is something some of the movies are more vague on than others. But yeah, you always get the idea that he at least gets some power and stuff from the Crow.
Right.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a while before the Crow even really plays a part, because it's, like the first half of the movie is just them bounty hunting. Like, they catch a bunch of people, they get a bunch of money, and then they hear about some fighting pits or whatever, and they go there, and then Basil's fighting some monster, which, you know, he describes as some giant 8-foot-tall monster with a huge mouth or whatever, and ends up eating him. And then inside the monster's, like, stomach is where he finds out who he is.
Yeah, this is where they set him up, right? Mr. Moorhead or something?
Dr. Moorhead, yeah.
And
so he's been, like, watching him for, like, a little while.
Yeah, and I guess it was Skaggs who had, I believe it was Skaggs, who was hiding in the room when Dr. Moorhead told Basil about the pit fighting.
Yeah, so Gretchen informs Damien that Basil's alive and around, and so they
find a way to get them to go to a place, kind of trap them.
Yeah, and then he gets eaten by the monster, and Skaggs like, haha, you know, we took care of him. And then he gets all of his memories about the Crow, and he bursts out of the monster, and now all of a sudden he knows what he has to do.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, vaguely.
And like Brandon Lee, it's cool. He does heal. Like, they said that
which comes into play very little, honestly.
Yeah, like the walls of the stomach and all that. They said that
like the acid was burning him, and then
but he would come out and he would heal.
Yeah, so like you get that, you get a scene where he sticks his hand on a knife, and then you get a couple scenes where he gets shot, and that's really the only time they really touch on that, which I think that was something handled way better in the Brandon Lee movie. Like, one of my favorite scenes of that movie
when he shoots
is
him?
with Fun Boy, when he puts his hand up against the gun and he's like, "Take your shot" or whatever. Like, such a good moment, and they do, you know, that whole scene where he keeps shooting him and stuff.
And he spits out the bullet. No, that was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was pretty cool. Yeah, I just wish there was more of that. There's not a lot of Crow-like moments in here, which, I mean, you could argue that he's doing something a little more original.
And then another thing that I was confused about is I'm assuming this Crow didn't have the makeup, because they said
I was going to ask you about that.
Only in the end, when he had memories. And,
there was something like
he started crying
blood
and
that resembled the Crow.
Yeah, so
but wasn't there a scene early in?
It was when he was a kid. Because he had the makeup from when he was from the Halloween.
Yeah.
And I guess he put his hand over his face.
I thought there was a part where they talk about lightning flashing and you seeing the makeup on his face, but that must be when he comes back.
Yeah, no, because I think they put. Either he puts his hand over Basil's face as a little kid, or they cover his mouth or whatever, and it kind of messes up the makeup, and that's what he said. They Crow-like.
Yeah, because there's really no indication that he looks like that the whole movie.
No, because I mean, you would think in a Western style environment, like who was it that Fango Dango.
Fango Dango? Yeah, I literally have a note that just says this character's name is Fango Dango.
Yeah, so he's talking to Fat. Like, they're at the bar, and they're looking over at Basil from a distance, and he's talking to him, and he's just like, who's this guy? You know, like,
yeah,
who the hell does this guy think he is? And, you know, Fat's just like, well, he's pretty much a badass. You
know?
And
they do a good job of making him a badass.
Right, right. But you would think if he was wearing makeup, wouldn't he be like, who's that clown over there? Yeah. So the whole time I just got this vibe that he just was a normal looking dude, which kind of, I'm not.
But I mean, in the world he describes, it wouldn't be that out of place for some guy to be walking around with some black lines painted on his face either.
For sure.
But I mean, we're in a world where fucking demons are around. I don't think anybody's going to really care.
But I feel like it should at least be brought up.
Considering it should be highlighted in the text at some point.
Yeah, considering they repeated a couple other things. You know, the gods and monsters, they beat it to the ground. But yeah, those just little things I am trying to figure out. I guess we'll never really know, but
yeah. So after he remembers who he is, we get the scene with him and Fats in like a bar, and he's like convincing him, like, "Hey, you know, like I remember now." And Fats kind of doesn't believe him. And that's when he sticks his hand on the knife to show him or whatever. And then at some point they get separate. I think Basil goes outside to basically like get some fresh air type situation, and Fats is just. They got a lot of money at this point, so he's just enjoying himself in the bar, and then he ends up being led to a room where he eventually gets kidnapped by Skag.
Yeah.
And they bring him to Damien's castle, and the whole thing is they're trying to lure Basil to them.
Right.
And this is where we meet crazy Dr. Moorhead.
Yeah.
And do you remember the names of the girl and the other guy?
Dude, I didn't even know how to pronounce one of them.
Yeah, the girl has some really hard to pronounce name.
Yeah, there's some.
And these are the names I forgot to take notes on. And that's really pissing me off because they're kind of important characters.
Okay, we're gonna do this right now. We're gonna fucking do this. I'm gonna look it up.
Yeah, because I don't have the script on this thing anymore. But yeah, so we get Dr. Moorhead, and he's got two buddies. One who used to work for Damien. He used to work for Skag as like one of his soldiers, basically. And he's gone. He left them. I think he was like left for dead, basically. And he has joined Dr. Moorhead, and they're kind of like a traveling circus situation. And then they have a girl who's like a knife thrower who has a really weird name. She's the name I couldn't pronounce. Tarkus?
Tarkus Thorn?
Yeah, I think it was Tarkus.
And then there's Casamorden, which is that alien that we were talking about.
Yeah, so that's the crazy alien that gives Damien his powers.
Yeah. And then there's Tarkus.
The girl's name starts with an I. That's all I remember.
There was Dr. Hives, which was the...
He's like the crazy doctor that Damien... So Damien has like basically like a Dr. Kevorkian fucking dude or Dr. Frankenstein guy who creates monsters.
But the girl's name's like Israfel or something?
Yeah, Israfel or is... Yeah,
so weird.
We can just call her Israfel. It doesn't really fucking matter.
It doesn't even matter. But
I mean, she's described as like a 14-year-old, and Basil doesn't want her coming with until she like proves that she can throw knives really good.
Yeah, so this pretty much ends up being, once he meets them, that kind of ends up being
it becomes really straightforward.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, and it becomes, like, this is where I'm torn on this movie. I really like the world they set up. I really like the characters. I think, like, and he's really good at, like, separating the characters in the dialogue. Like, Dr. Moorhead has this really weird way of talking, because you just imply he's a fucking weird dude in the head. And he feels like a cool character, and Tarkus, that's the other guy. You get enough history between him and Skag, who they come head to head once they get to the final battle and everything. And I really like the characters. I really like the story. It's just the parts that are the crow are what weigh this script down.
Yeah, I almost
like. I think you take out the intro.
I don't feel like Basil was the main.
He doesn't feel like the main character. No. Fats feels like the main character to me. Like, he's the one who gets more dialogue. He's the one who seems to know what's going on.
He's the main focus at the end of the fucking movie.
Yeah, and even though Basil's the badass, and it kind of seems like Fats is the brains, and he knows that he can keep this Basil guy around to protect him, and they work well together. And so Fats is like kidnapped and held at Damien's castle, and that's basically just there to lure Basil there, and so they walk there with their crew, and they're basically just mowing things down along the way.
They sneak in, split up, two, and they go and they just pretty much clean a house. And you hear about that monster ape type, monster
The one that Dr. Hives has. They like
Right.
So they have to like go through like some marshes where they fight basically like zombies. It sounds like, but I picture more zombies from like Army of Darkness, not like just like Resident Evil style zombies. And then they crawl up through like the body dumping tubes into the castle, where they dump all the bodies in from the castle into the marsh. Yeah, and then that's where we come across Dr. Hives, who he's got they basically just describe it as like a giant gorilla monster who they just kind of take care of it right away.
They never really even explain how he was made or if he was a human that they experimented with. It was just kind of just...
It's just like they kind of appear at Dr. Hives and he's just like, open the cage, and they let the monster out, and like I don't even remember what happens to it.
I think doesn't he stab him? I forgot. Was it Tharkus, whatever?
Tarkus is the one who, because he's implied to be like a bigger guy.
I think they both charged at each other, and he stabbed it, but he also got hurt as well.
Yeah, but I think he just kills it immediately.
And it was like, it seemed like a big threat.
Yeah, there's very little danger. And it definitely shows that this is an early script for Rob Zombie, because it does kind of follow a traditional format, and it's pretty simple. Like I said, it becomes really straightforward once he remembers who he is. Because it's literally just like now they have their path and they do it with very little obstacle, and you kind of get your moment at the end where everybody's engaged in different battles. So like they get into the castle, and Basil is heading for Damien, and Tarkus is fighting Skag, and then what's his name, Dr. Moorhead, and is Raphael or whatever her name is. They go after the witches,
right? And
everybody's kind of in their battle. And it all has the starting point where, hey, they're all kicking ass. Like, they kill a bunch of witches. He's beating Skag's ass, and Basil is sneaking going after Damien. And then it all kind of goes into, oh, now they're all in trouble. Like, Skag's winning, and the witches, Gretchen, the main witch, is still alive, and she locks them in a cage.
Then Damien somehow turns into a giant
stone golem reasons.
I didn't understand that at all. But you know what I will say? The battle between Basil and Damien, it was kind of fun. You know,
that part I started like, maybe I was just getting kind of burned out on reading it at that point, because like the end to me gets a little fuzzy.
Okay, so after he pretty much it's in pretty similar fashion of the original, where they're at the rooftop and he kind of gains the memory that kind of gives him that last boost.
I think the alien tries to attack him, and it's implied it has like squid arms or something.
The end of it is like
I remember him being grabbed by like squid arms. Yeah, he pulls him into the alien world because the alien's trying to kill him.
Which with that's kind of where I got. I felt like that part didn't really need to happen.
No, that whole storyline and characters really should. It doesn't fit this script at all.
Let me say, if you're hearing this and you're confused as shit as to what the hell we're talking about this alien world, I guarantee you're gonna be just as confused if you try to read the script.
Yeah, so it does not make any sense.
Really fucking trying.
Yeah. And like the more we talk about it, the more I'm like, did I like this script? Because like there's a lot of weird shit here.
No, because you nailed it when you said like if they were to make this movie and it had nothing to do with the Crow, I would be so on board.
I'm like, take out the beginning, take out the whole him killing him, and like just drop us in this world.
Yeah, I guess I can see where you sprinkle a little bit of the Crow, where Fats almost ended up being like the Sarah, where he was trying to save her in the end. You know what I mean? And then,
they don't. Like, his mom was killed, and we get very little reference to, like, he's not avenging just himself, he's avenging his mom.
Kind of glad that I did like the Evil Dead thing in the end where the mom came back.
Yeah, so they bring her back for, like, and it's literally, like, 2 seconds. Yeah. It's, like, half a paragraph on a page of just, like, you're not my mom, and then
well, kind of. It was like, what's going on? For a second there, you can see a little vulnerability from Basil. Which wasn't shown at all throughout
seconds. And then
which was kind of cool, because I felt like throughout the whole thing, he didn't show a lot of emotion, didn't show a lot. I mean, here and there, like when he would even grin, they made note of it. So that's how you knew how little emotion this guy showed.
Yeah, I mean, they basically just imply, this dude's a stone cold badass. Yeah, and so that's kind of the only time you get any of the emotion at the end.
And then as soon as he finally fights back, gets right before he's about to die, he ends up his eyes again. He cries tears of blood. I think about the whole death of his mom and everything, and fights back, kills Damien, and at that point, all the other characters who are in trouble all the monsters and witches and
everything
zombies,
just
kind
like
of turns to dust.
disappears. Yeah, that I thought was kind of lame.
You know, and they see Basil.
It's the end all, like, oh, if you kill the main bad guy, then it's all good, and everything just goes away. I was a little disappointed with that.
And then, you know, they go, and the characters, obviously at that point, they realize what had happened. And Basil won.
Yeah.
You know, he did it. And, you know, they all see each other, and he's asking, where's Fat? You know, like, is he still alive? You know, because at that point, he was pretty much alive, but
they were,
barely.
like, torturing him, basically. Because
just
they wanted him to
alive.
keep him alive to get Basil there. But, yeah, so he's basically, like... Throughout the movie, they keep cutting back to Damien's castle, and he's got him strung up or on a table, and they've beaten the shit out of him. They just imply he's just had his ass kicked so hard.
And the whole time, the cool part
and
is he's kind of waiting for Basil, because he knows that.
Yeah. And he's also like, fucking kill me. Like, I don't give a shit. Like, he's still, like, mouthing off to him. Like, Fats is honestly the best character in the movie.
Yeah.
Like, hands down.
So he's asking, you know, is Fat alive? Blah, blah. So they take him to Fat, and they kind of give them their own moment, you know?
Yeah.
And he talks to him, and he's like, you know, I thought you forgot about me. And he's like, of course not. You have the money. You know?
Yeah.
And then, you know, at that point, they kind of share a moment, and Fat passes away. But this is what really bugged me. And I did look online, and I seen there was somebody else who did a review.
Oh, really?
And they mentioned this, and I for sure have the same complaint. Is in the end he just vanishes off into the fog, into the mist, whatever, with his horse. It's kind of
left ambiguous.
But it's like the whole thing of the crow is he was put back for one reason, to get revenge.
Yeah.
So why this almost feels like, is this just another, like, a kill count?
Yeah.
Because if he's still going
like,
in,
is he going to wander the world forever?
You know, it's like he was only stuck in this world because he had to avenge the death to make things right. But it's like, it almost feels like it makes this whole situation just like another killing adventure, just another day for him, instead of like, this is why he came back.
Yes.
You know, and that's my
Which, I mean,
problem.
it's weird that he came back and he's around on Earth for 27 years before he even goes after... Like you said, it's weird that he loses his memory and has no memory of it. And it's kind of the same thing. Like, oh, what happens to him afterwards? I will point out, though, I don't know if you remember, and this is only kind of explained in some deleted scenes, but in The Crow 2, City of Angels, he finishes the job and he's supposed to go back, but Sarah gets kidnapped, so he decides not to go back. And then the movie, and then he goes and tries to save Sarah or whatever, but she dies and whatever. And then the movie ends with him just driving off on a motorcycle. And it's, again, left ambiguous. Yeah. I guess there was a deleted scene in that movie that basically explained that since he gave up his chance to go back to heaven, he can never go back to heaven. And he's just cursed to live on Earth forever.
Something as small as that little detail could do so much. You know what I mean?
And I personally, I will not defend it. I like Crow, City of Angels, just because, like, I like the main character. I like the whole magician aspect of him, and it's a really dark and fucking weird movie compared to the first one.
I mean, just like me, I love The Crow, and I was really harsh on him. The Wicked Prayer, I would never watch it.
No, the 3 and 4. I mean, even 3.
I liked Salvation, I will say.
Yeah,
I thought Eric Mabius, whatever. I thought it was fun, and I liked.
There was some good stuff to it.
Stuff, you know? I thought it was fun. It was a fun movie to watch. Like, it's
I would never recommend it.
Yeah, the Crow movies aren't fucking Oscar winners.
2 and 3 are like guilty pleasures.
Yeah, but all in all, I think if the script had nothing to do with The Crow, it would be definitely something for, if not horror fans, at least Rob Zombie fans for sure. You know,
yeah.
But again, if they were to ever take things from this, I hope it wouldn't be the whole monsters everywhere thing, because I felt like it was almost too much. You know, it's almost like if you try to make dinner, you know, and your main course or your main dish is the steak, you know, like but on top of steak you make chicken legs, you make fucking whole bunch of things. It's like, oh, well, you're taking away from what your whole main part of the meal is, and if the whole thing is about Basil and he's the main character and he is the Crow. Yeah. Like, and I guess he has a little fucking poem in the end where he is the Crow. Yeah. Like, give him a little bit more. Like, we need a little more to sink our teeth into.
For being him being the main character, you spend very little time with him, and he does the least amount in the movie almost. Like I said, I think Fats is the main character. I think Fats is the best character. It's almost like if you were to make the Crow from the point of view of Sarah.
Right.
Like,
but and that's the thing. You're when you've watched The Crow hundreds of times. You're so used to seeing it from his perspective, which is why you kind of grow this this connection with Brandon Lee's character, with Eric Draven, because you're just like, from one, you see all the flashbacks from his mind.
Yeah.
You see what he went through. You even get to see
you follow him through the whole movie.
Even
like,
even the intimate moments with his wife, all the cute moments with his fiance, you could say. And those all just build connection with the character, because in the end you felt more sympathy in the end.
And this is a problem. Fats is somebody who came to know him later. And that's kind of your only connection you have with him in the movie. And they spend a good part of the movie separated from each other. And then the only other character is his mom, who's killed in the first 5 minutes, and you don't get any reference to her ever again until the last 5 minutes. And they mention he has a dad who gets no screen time at all. Like, we have no character for him to be avenging, for him to even care about, him, except for Fats.
I think the biggest mistake was making him a boy and dying. I think if you would have made him,
that's weird.
Like, let's say, your dad passed away. Like, what if the story was something more along the lines of, okay, well, I'm a young man, and
I thought it was going to be the dad.
Somebody killed my dad, and I didn't want my mom to live alone, so I was living alone with my mom.
Yeah.
So, and then Damien comes and he kills my mom and he kills me. So then at least, even if it's a young man, he doesn't have to spend fucking 27 years doing God knows what. Like, you tell me, throughout those 27 years, the thing is, like, throughout those 27 years, he didn't get one flashback.
Yeah,
that's what bugged me. I got the fact that,
you're telling me he was never near death before.
Yeah, and especially being a bounty hunter and
just being a child.
Yeah, and I'm just thinking, like, throughout those 27 years, if what you were doing was going around riding horses, killing people for money, for finding everybody who's wanted and killing them,
you never took a bullet in the arm or something.
There was one moment where you got a little flashback and thought, "What the fuck am I?"
Yeah,
and that's just where.
Or like this crow that I don't even know. Do they mention the crow following him before the flashback? Or does the crow not even come into it until afterwards?
I feel like
I feel like they don't even mention it until he has his flashback. And then all of a sudden, I have this bird now, too.
Yeah, and I didn't... The fact that they were on horses, too. There's like horses, crows...
I mean, I like the idea of it being like a Western. Like, I'm cool with that.
Yeah,
it felt to me like Borderlands, but a little more Western-y.
A Western, but what the fuck? A Western with the stone golem. Like,
see, it's that stuff.
It has to be a special kind of movie to have those two things in one. Like, you have to really explain...
No movie could have pulled that off.
If it's gonna be that wild, and there's zombies, there's witches, there's ghouls, there's horses, there's and you're doing all this in one world... You got to give some kind of fucking foundation or some explanation as to why this world is the way it is, and if that's the case, at the very least, show some kind of separation as to how powerful the crow is compared to all these guys. Because honestly, you can look at the giant ape guy and assume his character is way stronger than
Yeah, Basil never really comes into contact with any other main character, like villain. Like, he never fights Skag. There's no other big villain. Like, the only other named villain is Gretchen the Witch, and he never comes in contact with her either. It's just like him doing his bounty hunter thing and taking out a lot of foot soldiers, but other than that, the only main villain he fights is Damien.
Yeah, it's again, I mean, if you're a Rob Zombie fan, I definitely suggest checking it out, only because the visuals and stuff are fun.
Like I said, he's very good at writing a world and creating, and I would love to see what he would do with something similar to this, or given another draft of this, if he took out all the crow stuff, what he could turn it into. I'd totally be down to look at that.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I mean, I don't know. I really want to know more about this. There's not enough information out there. If I could fucking set it up, I would love to fucking meet him and just ask him about it.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll start doing from now, like, at the end of the ones we do, should do a 5-star rating. I think this one, for sure, I would give it a 2.5. Only because if I like it enough to where I think it would be fun as a standalone film, I can't say I hated it. But at the same time, if I'm judging it from a Crow movie, I would say it's probably 1.5. But, all in all, I think the way...
I mean, even as a Crow movie, it's better than some of the sequels. Like, I don't think it'd be a good Crow movie. I think it'd be a much better standalone movie.
And Angel and fucking Tara Reid with her crooked tits.
Oh my God.
If those people aren't in the movie, then I'd
I
still
hate
watch
Tara
it.
Reid so much. She's just one of those actors. I mean, she's terrible. That's why I don't like her. But she's one of those actors.
He should have never been the Crow. I don't know who's watching Terminator.
I hope
2
nobody even knows what we're talking about. Like they haven't seen the fourth Crow movie.
No, I hope
so
that
bad.
you hear all these weird names and you're just like, wait, is this all in one movie? Because if you don't know, yes, and it's Crow 4: Wicked Prayer, and it's by far the worst.
I never even finished it.
I'm pretty sure that somebody whose favorite movie is Terminator 2 and just wanted to meet Edward Furlong. I'm convinced because there's no reason why anybody who sees the Crow movies thinks Edward Furlong when you think
no,
badass.
It was so terrible. This would have been a better movie than that. Like,
no,
this would have been better than Salvation, I would say, because it would have been fucking ballsy. Like, it's so different. Like, you could never look at the first Crow movie and envision a sequel like this.
No.
So, like, just on that alone, it'd probably get a few boosts for me.
Based on the books, there were a whole bunch of different Crows. There were
Yes, I mean, there's one main. I'm a little fuzzy on all this. I know there's one main Crow comic it's written by James
O'Barr.
Yeah. So he wrote the one book, and then I know there's other comics and there's novels and stuff, but I don't know if any of them are like official or if he's involved in any of them at all. But there are a lot of it because I know there's like a Native American one and stuff like that. I don't know how official those are. But there's a lot of different ones that are different interpretations. They're all standalone. None of them are sequels or anything. And yeah, they're all very different, but nothing like this.
Yeah. But you know what? I'm glad I read it because it was fun. It took me on
This was one of the ones that when I was collecting scripts for the podcast and I was like, I can't wait to read this because I have to know what it is.
Yeah. No, I
just from the title
alone.
it,
like a long time ago.
See, I never even heard about it. It was just one that popped up on my radar when I was collecting scripts for the podcast.
It was back when I heard about House of Thousand Corpses and him fighting to get it done, and then I also read that he had
because there was
the Crow.
That was something I learned recently because he's good friends with Chris Hardwick and he did the Nerdist podcast. I didn't know about the whole House of a Thousand Corpses thing
being done for years before. Before
in that whole situation. So yeah, I would really like to know because there's no date on the script. I'd love to know where it is in correlation of his career. Like it's very early on,
and I would love to know what his influences were for
yeah, absolutely.
This is definitely interesting. I don't know if it'll ever be a future episode, but if there's ever a way, or if it even exists, but the show, Rob Zombie was starting to write a movie called Tyrannosaurus Rex,
which I remember hearing about a long time ago.
Yeah, and he released like a.
Didn't he do like an animated thing too?
It was just like a poster. It was like kind of like a movie poster, and it kind of had this weird like 80s horror or kind of like I don't even know. It kind of gave off like a House of a Thousand, like Devil's Rejects kind of feel.
Yeah.
But in the background, you see like in the clouds, a silhouette of like a Tyrannosaurus Rex. Which I mean, it kind of had like a Rob Zombie vibe, but at the same time, it was kind of like this, where you're just like, it seems like a total mindfuck.
Yeah, you showed me this right before we recorded.
Yeah,
because I remember hearing about it, but it was just totally off my radar at this point.
Yeah, and he did that one, and as well as the Blob. I know he was going to do a remake of that. And
I did hear about that actually. I don't think that ever even got very far.
Yeah, so
I'll definitely see if I can find the Tyrannosaurus Rex thing.
Yeah,
like I haven't heard about it ever coming out, but I'll do a search, see if I can find something.
Yeah, or if you guys are listening, if there's anybody who's interested, knows,
absolutely. If anybody wants to send us, you can email us at shelvedfilmpodcast@gmail.com.
Yeah, or better yet, here I'll even take a little bit further. If somebody finds the script and they contact Jeremy with the script, I will send you a free Cryptic Closet shirt of your choice.
Yes, which is Cryptic Closet is your horror-themed clothing line.
Correct, yeah. So you can check it out. It's thecrypticcloset.com. We have everything from like glow in the dark Eddie Munster pins to
and you can follow him on Instagram as well at the Cryptic Closet.
Yeah,
and it's a lot of cool stuff. You've given me some shirts and you've shown me some of your pins. The Eddie Munster pin that you showed me the other day, that's awesome.
Yeah, I even have a Crow shirt there, but it's the Hangman's Joke, which was Eric Draven's band.
Yeah.
Did like a fake tour shirt.
Yeah, I wouldn't have even that's so deep cut Crow thing. I wouldn't have even picked that up. All right. I mean, is there anything else you need to promote then? I think we're pretty much done here, right?
No, but I look forward to doing the next one. I know we had a couple lined up. We were talking about like Alien, right? There was like a
there's the original Prometheus scripts, Alien Engineers. Which that'll be in May when the movie's coming.
Yeah, but yeah, if you guys have any questions, or again, if you guys know anything about those movies we were talking about, feel free to reach out. And
yeah, absolutely. Again, I'll say my email again. It's shelvedfilmpodcast@gmail.com. And you can email us anything, and we check all the emails and read them on the mini episodes if anybody wants to send. You can also follow the show on Twitter at Shelved Podcast. Everything is so wordy. And always be sure to check the Tumblr to see what scripts are coming up and check out the episodes at shelvedfilmpodcast.tumblr.com. I'm trying to get everything short. But hey, man, thanks for sitting with me talking about Rob Zombie's Crow.
Anytime you have anything to do with the Crow or Rob Zombie
yeah,
or horror,
absolutely.
any kids dying, I will be here.
Well, that seems to be a running theme so far. So
I'll see you next week.
Yeah, all right.